Ever wondered what Britain's leaders really munch on while running the country? From Robert Walpole's 18th century roast beef feasts to Keir Starmer's Sunday roast, every Prime Minister's favorite food tells a story. This isn't just about taste, but a window into their personalities, crises, and legacies. Ready to dig in? Let's see what's been on the menu at number 10 for 300 years. Starting with the Georgian era, Robert Walpole, Britain's first de facto Prime Minister, lived at Houghton Hall in Norfolk, where he entertained with all the grandeur expected of his station. His name became attached to a dish. Walpole's dumplings, a rich blend of suet and dried fruit soaked in wine sauce. It was decadent and unapologetically heavy, a suitable metaphor for his long and lavish hold on power. Walpole's successors kept to the aristocratic norm. Spencer Compton, Henry Pelham, and the Duke of Newcastle likely shared similar tastes. Roasts of venison, jellied game, claret by the bottle, and desserts baked with imported sugar and expensive spices. At this point, dinner wasn't just about flavor, it was about influence. Prime ministers like Rockingham Pitt the Elder and Lord North held fast to formality, but Europe's changing palate crept into their kitchens. Pitt the Younger, despite being famously restrained, drank heavily. Port was his weakness, a constant companion through long nights in Parliament. Dinners remained elaborate, but the underlying culture was beginning to evolve. Public life and private habits no longer mirrored each other so seamlessly. By the time of the Victorians, figures like Peel, Palmerston, and Disraeli, the food reflected a nation caught between tradition and modernity. Roast beef mutton and steamed puddings were standard fare, but new influences from the colonies and from the continent were beginning to show. Disraeli, ever the showman, enjoyed rich sauces and elaborate suppers. Gladstone, his moral foil, ate with humble restraint. Fish, vegetables, nothing more than what was needed. The Edwardian period and the early 20th century saw the Prime Minister's table narrow its offerings. Industrialization and the pressures of global conflict meant that luxury had to be masked by efficiency. Figures like Balfour and Campbell Bannerman still dined well, but not extravagantly. When the First World War arrived, food changed again. Rationing entered public consciousness, and the Prime Minister was expected to reflect national restraint. This culminated during World War II, under Winston Churchill, a man who famously defied convention. While the nation queued for ration books and made do with Woolton pie, Churchill maintained his peculiar habits. He drank champagne with lunch, whiskey with breakfast, and insisted on turtle soup when the moment allowed. He didn't just eat, he performed. Dinners were part of diplomacy, and Churchill wielded his plate as deftly as he did his pen. After the war, austerity lingered. Clement Attlee, a man of immense vision but humble means, embodied post-war modesty. His meals were straightforward: roast meat, boiled vegetables, endless tea. Anthony Eden followed a similar path, albeit with a slightly more refined palate. As the 50s closed, Harold Macmillan brought back a sense of ceremony. Known for his traditionalism, his meals were structured: poached salmon roast, pheasant, minted peas. Food for Macmillan was order, and then came Harold Wilson, who upended everything. Wilson, with his Yorkshire roots and love of comfort, ate like a man of the people. He reportedly put HP sauce on nearly everything from bacon sandwiches to shepherd's pie. Salad, cream tinned salmon, and a strong cup of tea became culinary symbols of his political persona. He was not trying to impress, he was trying to relate. Edward Heath, his successor, was more continental in taste. An accomplished yachtsman, Heath brought back recipes from abroad. Coq au vin, cold tongue with pickles, pâté meals that hinted at Europe, just as Britain debated its role on the continent. James Callaghan returned to simplicity. His choices reflected his working-class upbringing: meat and veg meals, plain stews, sponge pudding. He ate not to perform but to recharge. And then came Margaret Thatcher, who introduced perhaps the most controlled diet No.10 had ever seen. During her 1979 campaign, she reportedly consumed 28 eggs a week following a strict high-protein diet. Grapefruit in the morning, grilled trout in the evening, fruit for dessert. That was her formula. She disliked sweets, skipped the carbs, and even served scrambled eggs to Ronald Reagan herself during a state visit. John Major brought the conversation back to earth. Raised on meat pies, baked potatoes, and peas, he stayed loyal to beige and brown classics. His food was comfort food, the kind you could find in a pub on any British high street. No fuss, no flourish. Then came Tony Blair, and with him a new rhythm. Blair enjoyed spaghetti bolognese, curry nights, and the occasional BLT. He cooked for himself, kept bananas on hand, and hosted informal dinners where red wine and pasta were more likely than roast lamb and port. His approach mirrored New Labour itself, modern, approachable, a break from the old ways. Gordon Brown was quieter. Private and reserved, he rarely spoke about food, but it's known that he ate porridge every morning, salted Scottish style. For dinner, it was usually mince and tatties, a reminder of his roots, unadorned and practical. David Cameron tried to strike a balance. He enjoyed Cornish pasties, sausage rolls, and the occasional tikka masala. He famously fumbled a campaign moment when he couldn't recall where he bought a pasty, but the sentiment remained. His tastes were familiar, accessible, and comfortably middle class. Theresa May was all sharp edges and sharper flavors. She loved English mustard, the kind that clears your sinuses, and carried strong cheddar on trips. Her favorite snack? A cheddar toastie with Branston pickle. For someone who rarely gave away personal details, her food choices spoke loudly. Boris Johnson, ever the character, was the opposite. He ate everything. Late-night kebabs, pork pies, full English breakfasts, and pub roasts all were fair game. He wasn't known for cooking, but he was certainly known for eating. His diet was as unpredictable as his politics, and equally indulgent. Liz Truss, though her time was short, was said to enjoy hearty British fare. Meatball sandwiches, sharp cheeses, and fast-filling meals suited her whirlwind tenure. Then came Rishi Sunak, and the mood changed again. Sunak's diet was clean, disciplined, and routine-driven. Green juices, protein bowls, no caffeine, no sugar. He often ate sushi or poke salads, rarely indulging, but every so often, a chocolate digestive biscuit would sneak in a small rebellion in an otherwise regimented day. And now Keir Starmer stands at the head of the table. Britain's first Jewish pescatarian Prime Minister, Starmer spent decades as a vegetarian before recently reintroducing fish into his diet. He publicly defended the humble sandwich as a cornerstone of British culture and called tandoori salmon with dal naan and pilau rice his ideal last meal. He often cooks for his family meals like pesto pasta, green beans, and new potatoes. For a man often portrayed as serious, his food choices are soft, familiar, and quietly comforting. And so, from suet dumplings soaked in brandy to grilled salmon on a weeknight, the culinary story of No.10 tells us more than any policy document ever could. These meals, elaborate, humble, disciplined, indulgent, echo the personalities behind the politics. They reflect Britain's changing class structures, global influences, and shifting values. Behind every war room strategy and economic plan, there was always a cup of tea, a roast, or a biscuit waiting nearby. Because at the heart of it all, even the most powerful people in Britain have to answer the same question we all do: what's for dinner? Subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into history's tastiest secrets.